local planning committee meeting to discuss the New York Forward grant. So I'm glad to see that everyone has taken time out of their busy day to come down and watch. It's really reassuring. Please excuse us because this is our first meeting, so maybe some hiccups going forth, but and people will introduce everyone, and they are going to go through the agenda and what to expect with the agenda. I just wanted to welcome everyone and not for nothing.
Watching live, now you're recording.
So again, I just want to welcome everybody to the first local planning committee for the New York Forward grant, and we're going to go over tonight the process, what to expect, and just to see what the roles are vis-a-vis the state, vis-a-vis the Dobbs Ferry and our committee. So I just know that we have our assembly person here. So Mary Jane, do you want to just come up and just say a few words? Right here, right? We're recording it right here. So you can just, if you want, that's fine, if you want, however you want to stand.
I can stand here, although I'm sorry for having my back to all of you. But you'll be able to hear me. I'm good 360 with my voice. Anyway, thank you very much for doing this. Mary Jane Shimsky, 5 Manor House Drive. I am so glad that my home village got this grant. Downtowns are going through a really important transition right now. It's still important to have places where people can go and where they can meet each other and gather and just run into each other. Purposes change over time, however, and we're certainly with the rise of e-commerce, we're certainly at a time where there's going to be a lot of that. And there has to be a lot of thought put into it. And this money can certainly be very useful in terms of making our downtown a more attractive place, a safer place, a more comfortable place for people to be, regardless of what they may be doing there in the future. I recognize many faces here. Other faces are new to me, but I can just tell that this is a real cross-section of people in the village. And I wish you well as you move forward. And if there's anything my office can do to help you out, give us a call. We'll see what we can do. So best of luck moving forward. And I can't wait to see what comes of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. We appreciate it. Thank you, Roseanne. Sure.
So welcome everyone. It's a true honor and a pleasure to be here. On a personal level, I grew up in New Jersey. Hope you don't judge me. But the first place I lived in Westchester and where I really fell in love with Westchester was Dobbs Ferry. So it really, you couldn't find a house here. But I mean that from the bottom of my heart. I really got to know what Westchester's about, from the downtowns, the public space, to the walking trails. And to be back here now in a semi-professional capacity, representing the Regional Economic Development Council, is a true pleasure. And you already have great raw materials. Can't wait to see what comes of it, and be a very, very small part of it. So thank you for having me here.
Thank you.
Susan, we'll turn it over to you.
All right, sounds good. So welcome. Thank you all very much. First of all, I want to say congratulations again to the village on this award. We are very excited to go through these next 8 months of a planning process. And then you're stuck with me even longer than that as we implement these projects. So I guess sorry in advance. I don't know. We'll see. But so welcome again to the first LPC mid-committee meeting. Want to just start quickly with our agenda. We have done the welcome, so thank you. We'll go around and do introductions of all the LPC members. I will be providing an overview or refresher of the LPC Code of Conduct that you all received the training on and the webinar you attended. We'll do a brief program overview, talk about the roles and responsibilities of everybody in this room, dive into a little bit about what to expect with project development and evaluation as we go through this process. And then we'll kind of talk about how the process wraps up. I'll then turn it over to Christy and Lizzie, who are with the consultant team BHB that are facilitating this planning process. And they'll talk a little bit more about Dobbs Ferry's New York Forward boundary, a little bit more information about what we've learned about Dobbs Ferry so far, and then do some activities with you all. But I will warn you, the first 45-ish minutes, you'll be hearing a lot from me. There are places for me to like pause and stop and take a breath, but interrupt me at any time if you have any questions. I want this to be as interactive as we can, but the first 45 minutes is a lot of just listening to me. So my apologies in advance. I will note that at the end of this, we will have a public comment period for anyone for the public to offer their thoughts. I also want to request anyone from the public to make sure that you sign in. And then there's also a little flyer as well that gives a quick overview of the process. And with that, let's get started with LPC introductions. So I'm going to ask each of you to introduce yourself, talk about your relationship to Dobbs Ferry, and then I would like for you all to tell me, Christy and Lizzie, one thing about Dobbs Ferry that we as outsiders should know. One thing, two things, you do what you gotta do. Selena?
Okay.
Put you on the spot first.
That was tough. All right, well, hello, I'm Selena Allen Precy. I am currently the Executive Director of Business Services for Mercy University. I've been there for 10.5 years. But that is not the first time that I had a relationship with Dobbs Ferry. I actually went to Our Lady of Victory Academy, which is in Dobbs Ferry, so it's kind of like my life came full circle, because I went to high school on the same grounds that now I work. I do enjoy it here. I live in Yorktown. I have 2 boys. So, I'm here most of my time. So one thing that you might not know about Dobbs Ferry, so I have a lot of memories at the Dobbs Diner. Maybe, and I'm a big foodie, so I will tell you that their carrot cake comes from Rockland Bakery, actually.
Oh.
So I will, that's my one thing. I'm sorry it's not more fun, but I'm sorry, so that was what I wanted to say.
Davey?
Hi, I'm JB Gomez. I co-own Climbing Wall Coffee and Beer, with my brother Chris, who was also a resident of Dobbs Ferry. I live in Tuckahoe, so not me. We've had the business for 5 years now, just really enjoyed the community that we've become a part of. We're there 16 hours a day, weekends, 14-hour days, weekdays, and absolutely love being a part of this. The thing that I would suggest to you guys with your time here is visit as many of the restaurants as you can, because we have some of the best in the river towns for sure.
I'm Christy Nell. I'm one of the trustees on the village board, and I also own a business in town called Hudco. I've been here 13 years with 2 young kids, 10 and 12 now. And some things, let's see. So there's 2 things, I think. One is the building I'm in, which is not part of this boundary, but it's called Hudson River Landing, and it's a big old industrial place right on the river. It had been a brewery up until the Prohibition, and then they closed the brewery down, flattened the building, so that building's not the building that's there. And now that building was built as the Methodist Book Concern. It was a printing facility for the Methodist Church. And so that's why it's big and industrial and strong, because it was a printing facility. And then there's still a beer cave, where in this hill, there's a cave in there that you can't use for anything yet, because they need to, make it permitted and have 2 egresses. But it's a really cool cave that is like a little hidden gem in the village that someday could be something. And the second thing is that the Rivertowns Chamber of Commerce that we have around here, that's like 10 years old, started as the Dobbs Ferry Chamber of Commerce, because we are the key business in the Rivertown. So we're gonna roll with that. Well,
I'm Dr. Nitin Gupta. I run Rivertown's Pediatrics, also the Dobbs Ferry representative of the Chamber of Commerce. Lived here for 12 years, have 2 kids. And I think, let's see, I think one thing that a lot of people don't know about Dobbs Ferry, outsiders, is our children play outside. And that is unique amongst many cities in this country. It really is a village, and we all know each other, and our children are safe and they play, and many times they play on the hills where you live.
Yes.
So that's my segue to you.
My name is Laura Danforth. I live and work at the Master School on Clinton Avenue. I've lived here in Dobbs Ferry for 10 years. Prior to that, Hastings for a couple of years. Worked at a school in the city. I'm head of school, so I live at 29 Clinton Avenue, which is called Park Cottage. And it used that, fun fact to know is that used to be attached to Esterwood, which is the old mansion on campus. And we are celebrating our 150th anniversary in 2027, which we're really excited about. And we're gonna hopefully do a lot of things with the town during that time, because we feel very proud being a part of Dobbs Ferry. We have kids from 27 different countries around the world who love Dobbs Ferry, love the diversity of Dobbs Ferry, the restaurants. We even had a young entrepreneur who makes his own coffee beans, who sold coffee at your wonderful place. So it's great being here, and it's an honor for being chosen. So thank you. And Dr. Gupta is our school doctor.
I'm the mayor of Dobbs Ferry. I've lived, I guess I've lived here the longest, I don't know. I've lived here since 1992. I've raised 3 daughters here. They went to public schools from kindergarten on up. Got a great education. School system, I think, is great. It's been an honor and a pleasure to be the mayor of Dobbs Ferry, to see such growth. I think we've done such great, responsible growth, and the downtown is just getting better and better every day. And I hope that this grant will go to enhance the downtown. Fun fact, I think, and I don't know if this is a rumor or not, but I think there used to be planes that would land on the Hudson River. And I think they would actually maybe drop off or pick up beer at your location at 145. So I think that's a fact that's no one knew about. And we'll see if we can do some more investigation on that. Maybe that was during Prohibition. I don't know. Everybody welcome.
So, Andrew Wigenstreich, I am a property and asset manager for Dolphin Property Services, where I oversee 41 multifamily affordable homes. I've spent the last 2 decades plus working within some economic development contexts, the last 10 of which has been specifically real estate. Within that, a lot of community planning efforts, both on an individual level or a company level or a townwide level. I'm coming here specifically through the Regional Economic Development Council, where I've served for just under a year, but I was attracted to that in the first place because of its potential, the work they've done to spearhead economic development really throughout the state. And fun fact, Dobbs Ferry is so great, you can get a committed lifelong New Jersey resident to move to Westchester. The pull is that strong. But really and on a more serious note, it's because it clearly is a gateway. When I lived here, I was able to travel throughout Westchester and truly got to know it very well. So I think it's an entirely appropriate designation, and part of one of the many amazing ingredients you have at your disposal. So again, very happy to be here.
Good evening, I'm Ed Trader. I too started out in New Jersey. But
Was this on purpose?
but as many people that are in the village now, we moved up from Manhattan about 25 years ago. Raised my 2 sons here, went through, Springhurst, middle school, the high school. It's been a great experience. I love being in Dobbs Ferry. I've lived in 3 different places in Dobbs Ferry. I love it so much. And I intend to stay here like forever, until I move to Portugal like everyone else. But to tell you one thing that, that I know about Dobbs Ferry that you guys don't, that doesn't exist, right? It's like, a wonderful community full of wonderful people, great shops. The growth and just the change in this community in the last 25 years has been wonderful to watch. And I'm grateful for that. And it's one of the reasons that I want to stay here forever.
I'm Donna Cassell. I'm a former deputy mayor. I served on the board for about 12 years. During that time, I was liaison to a number of committees, including the planning board, the conservation advisory board, the traffic committee, and the affordable housing task force. So kind of where I fit in, at the moment. I am still a member of the affordable housing task force. I'm also, a member of the, New York State Route 9, Transportation, Partnership Committee. And the affordable, as I said, at the, Senior Advisory Council, so. I've been in Dobbs Ferry for, I think, 22 years now, actually. I've been here, came from Manhattan. You know, I love it here. My partner's family, you know, intergenerational, they came here in the 1800s or something like that. So, I think that's what's one of the really neat things about Dobbs Ferry is the amount of generations that are here. And, you know, things being that, you know, with finances and stuff, I really, really like to see it stay that way and not just become, you know, not, I mean, I love people and the kids in the school, but we like to have the grandparents be able to stay here, and that's something that I'd sort of like to see. A fun fact, what I heard was, as you know, there are a lot of Italians here from Zimble, yeah, Italy, and I was told, I heard this in one of the historical society meetings, if it's true or not, but one of the reasons they like to settle here is that if you, we're known for our hills here in Dobbs, right? And if you go like up to the Hudson and you look, it really looks like an Italian hill town, you know, with those switchbacks and going up, so.
My name is Joe Casey. I originally hail from the Midwest, Springfield, Illinois. I moved here 15 years ago. I've been on the East Coast for about 30, raised my two sons. They're both going to be turning 21 in a month, which maybe I should talk to you. I'm the chairperson of the Recreation Commission. I'm also the president of the Dobbs Beacon Hill Co-op Association. My wife and I had moved here specifically for the school district when she was in special ed attorney. And she studied all the school districts in the area before we chose this. And we actually chose Dobbs Ferry because of its diversity of its student population. And you never know how your children are going to end up. So you want something that's going to have a wide range. So we actually chose this community to move to because of that. A fun fact. The Dobbs Ferry Beacon Hill Co-op Association was actually built as a housing project by the federal government that was then, is one of those successes that was then purchased from the federal government back in the early 60s or mid 60s. So we own it ourselves now, but it was actually one of those successful housing projects that you never hear about. Okay, so that's a fun fact.
Thank you very much. All right, so now we get on to me talking for a bit. So we're going to start with just a refresher on the New York Forward Code of Conduct. A lot of this won't necessarily make sense until we start talking about projects in a couple of months, but I do want to make sure that we're all aware of kind of what signing up and participating in the LPC, that we do have guidelines and standards that govern your participation here. So the requirement for the participating in this is that all LPC members are required to serve and act in the public interest. You must sign this code of conduct form for members of this committee. The code of conduct form is the second document in your folder. So if you could please review that and get that to me today or at another time, that would be helpful. And then we at the state come up with a handy little acronym that we ask you all to disclose conflicts of interest, and conflicts of interest for this process can be real conflicts of interest or perceived conflicts of interest. Again, act in the public interest and then disqualify yourself as necessary. Again, this will make a little bit more sense once we get into the projects and talking about those later in the process. So what does acting in the public interest mean? It means, again, avoiding the conflicts of interest. We ask that there should be no unwarranted privileges in which an LPC member should use or attempt to use their position to secure any unwarranted privileges or exemptions for themselves or others. No improper influence. LPC members should exercise their duties and responsibilities so as not to exert improper influence over other members. And then LPC members should exercise all of your duties and responsibilities for the primary benefit of the public and in a manner where any benefit to the member of a family or to an LPC member or a family member is relative or incidental. If there is an example of a benefit from a project that is more than incidental and a conflict of interest arises, the LPC member should recuse himself from discussion on that project. So we do ask that when a conflict arises, if it arises, that members must identify if they have a potential conflict of interest at the first meeting at which that project is discussed or that conflict is discussed. You will be asked to submit a formal recusal form noting your recusal from discussion on this project, and then you will not be able to vote or attempt to influence any discussion or vote on that project where that potential conflict exists. One thing I do want to note here is that it is actually very common for local planning committee members to have conflicts of interest. You all are very involved people in your downtown, and it's not necessarily surprising that you may serve on the board or you may have this potential conflict of interest. That is absolutely normal. We see it almost every year, so please don't let that fact intimidate you. But we will ask that you recuse yourself. In fact, in most cases, I ask for LPC members to step out of the room when a project is being discussed if they do have a conflict of interest. I will be reminding you at every meeting of your obligation of the conflict of interest and your obligation to recuse if needed. And then we will be keeping a list of these recusals and updating it at every meeting. And then at the end of the process, you all will vote on a slate of projects. And then we will have an official ballot that you all will submit and sign. And then at that point, you will also recuse yourself from voting on that project. If there are any instances where you think you may have a conflict of interest or you're not sure, you can ask me. In many cases, I will refer you to the Department of State's ethics officer and will provide you that contact information, which is up here. But at that point, I'll pause and see if there are any questions right now on the code of conduct. Okay. All right, so let's get started with the program. So the Downtown Revitalization Initiative started in 2016 and New York Forward, which started in 2022, are meant to help create healthy, vibrant, walkable downtowns that catalyze sustainable economic development and accrue these numerous benefits, both to the locality of Dobbs Ferry, the region, and the state as a whole. Within New York Forward, we have identified 7 different program goals, which are all very much interrelated, with the first one being creating an active downtown with a strong sense of place, something that feels very uniquely Dobbs Ferry. Second is to attract new businesses that have diverse job opportunities, skills, and salaries. Third goal is to grow the local property tax base. We also want to use this program to help enhance public spaces for arts and culture, which ties back into that strong sense of place from the first goal. Another goal is to build a diverse population with residents and workers, complemented by diverse housing and employment opportunities. Again, to provide amenities that support and enhance downtown living and quality of life. And then our last goal is also to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and support investments that are more resilient to future climate change impacts. So we're trying to do a lot with this program. And you'll find that a lot of the projects you will potentially evaluate, we'll hit some of these, a lot of them will hit all of these, but this is generally what we want to do when we're thinking about revitalizing downtowns. So it is about an 8-month process. We are having our first local planning committee here meeting today. We've got about 5 more scheduled. We'll talk about those dates later on. And so we'll go through about the end of October with our planning committee meetings. And during this process, we have 2 public workshops. We're going to be doing our first one in early June, and then our second one is going to come in October, where we have a better sense of what some of the projects may be. It's going to be called the Open Call for Projects, which is where we solicit project submissions from public, private, and not-for-profit entities. I'll talk a lot more about that later. And then the consultant team and I will be doing a lot more public engagement throughout this entire process. And we will directly be soliciting ideas from you all a little bit later on about what that should look like and what are the best strategies for reaching out to the public. So through this, we'll be developing some vision goals and more specific strategies to help achieve those goals. VHB will be working on a downtown profile and assessment, which is really this review of what is happening in downtown right now that will then hopefully inform you all as you evaluate projects, select projects to help to meet those state goals and also the goals that you all will establish starting here today. Once we start getting projects in, I'll start working on what we call project profiles. And this is basically a compilation of all the information that the state wants to see in order to evaluate projects. All that information will be shared with you all as well as you all discuss projects. That leads into the strategic investment plan, which takes everything I just discussed and puts it in a plan for the state to review, but for Dobbs Ferry to also hopefully use looking forward into the future as well, that can help guide, other, future revitalization. And then at that point, the multi-agency state review begins. So talking about roles and responsibilities, this is an incredibly collaborative, multi-stakeholder, multi-partnership effort. So we have the local planning committee, you all, we have the co-chairs led by the mayor and Andrew. The state agencies are also involved, as well as the consultant team. Municipal staff is essential to helping this goal, helping this process. The public is absolutely important, and then the project sponsors, those submitting the projects. And Steve, I'm gonna pause and ask you to do a quick introduction of yourself.
Steve Tilley, I own a business as well as a property at the corner about 150 feet from here, and I have mandates from my 14-person office that I'll be introducing into the proceedings.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Sorry to put you on the spot after you just got up the hill. So a little bit more detail on the local planning committee. So we have the two co-chairs leading it. You all be brainstorming ideas, providing feedback to us to help facilitate this process in the most effective way. We really rely heavily on you all to promote the process and encourage participation from the broader community. You know, you all know the community, you all live in the community, like that's a really critical part, is helping to promote this and get people engaged. You'll help me refine the vision for Dobbs Ferry's downtown that was submitted in the application, developing goals and strategies to that vision, providing feedback and input on the downtown profile and assessment. And then the bulk of the work will happen with, the priority with the projects where you'll identify and select and evaluate those. And ultimately recommend them to be included in the strategic investment plan as projects that you all would like to see funded by the state. And throughout this, you'll be working with the consultant team and the state team to prepare the strategic investment plan due at the end. So what to expect? Approximately 5 to 6 meetings. We're going to go ahead and talk about scheduling 6 in case we need it, 5 if we get through with our business. So we'll just kind of see how that goes. Meetings are usually a minimum of 2 hours. Sometimes they are longer, particularly when we get into talking about projects, usually around local planning committee meeting number 4, it gets a little bit longer. So I'm just going to prepare you for that right now. And then just expect regular emails from mostly VHB, but you also may receive some from me as well, with meeting and project materials for you all to review throughout the process. So the state team consists of Department of State, so I'm kind of the project manager from the state team, but we also work with Empire State Development, Homes and Community Renewal, and NYSERDA, and we have a representative from Empire State Development here tonight, Eric Warren.
See me often.
And so we will be working with the consultant team and you all on these tasks that I just outlined, helping to ensure compliance with the New York Forward program, participating in preparation and review of all of these documents, and then just providing general support about housing, economic development, decarbonization, just making sure that, project sponsors and you all are kind of aware of the state requirements as well, so that that can inform your project evaluation and discussion, and then ultimately supporting project sponsors with project development throughout the entire process. And then we have the consultant team. These will be the people that you will hear from much more after today. So they will guide the planning process, lead all of the public engagement, plan for all of that, send you all the emails, helps to promote everything. They will be assisting you all with the project identification and development and then the evaluation. They'll also be working very closely with the project sponsors to develop their projects so that we can get all the information that you all are looking for to understand the projects and also that the state is looking for. And then they will be doing all of the drafting of the components. So I'm going to turn it to Christy, who's going to talk a little bit more about who's on the consultant team.
Thank you. And before I do that, I'll introduce myself. I'm Christiana Castellak. I go by Christy, just easier. I'm the project manager for the consultant side. VHB is where I'm from, same with Lizzie, and VHB is the lead consultant as part of this process. We do have 5 sub-consultants that I'll introduce in a second. And although I might not have a Dobbs Ferry fun fact, I will say that I just recently moved to Harrison in Westchester in January from Long Island. So I am now a Westchester County resident, so I take pride in that. And I'm slowly making my way out of Harrison. I've made my way to Scarsdale, so I'm moving over. This is my third New York Forward, and I, before that, have participated with the consultant team, and 2 DRIs. So I have some experience, and I'm excited now to be working in Dobbs Ferry with you all, and I'll hand it over to Lizzie.
Hi, I'm Lizzie Alwater. Yeah, I go by Lizzie. And this is my first New York Forward. And I'm looking forward to getting to know Dobbs Ferry and really understanding what it is that makes Dobbs Ferry makes it unique. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it, and yeah, thank you.
So as I alluded to, we have 5 sub-consultants on our project team. We have Haydick Engineering. They're going to cost estimates for mostly the public projects, but if private projects need assistance, they will support them there. On Chorus Group, there are lead architects. So again, they'll be supporting the public projects, but if the private do need support, they'll be there as well. Kevin Dorka LLC, he's our lead economic, oh man, I can't say economic. Thank you, there you go, you got it. So he's gonna be the one that's really gonna be leading the charge with the review of that downtown profile and assessment. And we're gonna talk about some demographic data that he found later on. Sharp Lens is a photographer, so we're gonna bring him in probably in the fall to get some really great fall foliage photos, and that can be incorporated into the strategic investment plan. And then lastly, CMC Language Services, they're our translator. So all of our public facing materials for our public workshops and engagement events are going to be translated into Spanish. And I'll hand it back over to Susan. Thank you.
And then we have the Village of Dobbs Ferry, which is essential. So we noticed the mayor's one of the co-chairs and will help provide leadership for this process. But the village is really helpful to us in providing that local on the ground assistance. We are not here, so it's really essential to us to have the support from the village, which we are definitely receiving. They will be supporting the New York Forward process by identifying the key resources, information, stakeholders, finding a place for us to have meetings and public workshops, and introducing us to people to talk to throughout this process. And then there'll be that local point of contact for public engagement, helping to publicize things through the newsletter, social media, et.cetera. And then the public, this is a really absolutely essential component and part of this process. We'll be providing input on the Dobbs Ferry vision and the needs and opportunities for us to, for you all as a committee to really help make sure that you are evaluating and informing projects in ways that serves the entire community. You'll also be sharing ideas about how to revitalize Dobbs Ferry. And then later on in the process, you'll be providing input and feedback on the projects that are submitted for LPC consideration. And then the last big group is the project sponsor. So these are the ones that are submitting projects for you all to consider. So they'll be submitting project scopes that are in the New York Forward area, which we'll review shortly, providing the required information to you all and the project and the state about the project, including the scope, the capacity, the budget, and then engaging in ongoing conversations with consultants, VHB and the state about project development. By the end of this process, we know all of our project sponsors incredibly well. We talk to them a lot to make sure that we're trying to get all of the information to you all for evaluating projects. All right, there's my reminder to pause.
Free.
Any questions so far from you all? All right, I gotta go again. All right, so let's dive into projects. So there are 4 categories of eligible projects. The first one we have are what we call public improvement projects. And so this can include things like streetscapes or transportation improvements, public art, green spaces, green infrastructure, parks, wayfinding signage, and really any other projects that are in the public realm. Our next category is new development or rehabilitation of the downtown buildings. So this could be for new construction building, but it also could be to renovate an existing building. And that could be for mixed use, commercial, residential, not for profit or public use. With the goal of these types of projects resulting in employment opportunities, housing, or other community services. We also have what's called a small project fund. So we recognize that, some of these bigger projects, public improvement or new development or rehab, can be absolutely transformative, but we also recognize that a collection of smaller projects, maybe that redo a facade and, bring it back to its historic character, or that, provides permanent equipment for a business to expand or get started, or can, renovate some upper story units. Those can be really impactful too when you collect them all together. So this is a project, fund that, usually the village would be the sponsor of, but it's essentially what we call like a re-grant. So the village could potentially receive these funds or submit this project and receive these funds. And then if awarded, it would be kind of a re-grant to potential interested parties, in the New York Port area. And then our last category is what we call branding and marketing. And so this is, could be branding and marketing projects that target residents, tourists, investors, developers, visitors. This is really about overall branding and marketing of the downtown, but should not be for individual businesses or other entities. So we do not pay for branding and marketing of an individual business. This is for the downtown in general. Things that are not eligible, planning activities. So this is meant to be primarily a capital, for capital projects. So we don't usually fund planning activities, such as, if you want to develop a complete streets plan, that's not something that we fund. We want to see in capital investment generally. Operations and maintenance. So funds cannot be used for ongoing or routine expenses like staff or salaries, rent, utilities, and property upkeep. Pre-award costs. So this is a reimbursement program. And there can be no reimbursement for costs incurred before an award is made. So if you have you're spending money this summer and you're like, oh, well, I want to spend that for reimbursement, not eligible. You have to have a funding award made, and only costs from that point on could be potentially reimbursable. Funds cannot be used for property acquisition. So property acquisition can be part of a project, but New York Forward funds cannot pay for the actual property acquisition. And then similar to operations and maintenance, training or other program expenses, continuous costs cannot be eligible. So this is really about meaning a primarily one-time investment. So what do we look for in projects? So the goal is to have projects that are shovel ready 2 years from award. So we know when we recognize award, there often has to be design and engineering, some additional planning, but we do want to see projects that are like ready to undergo that process, or even, more advanced than just the planning and design. So the goal is to have projects, with shovels in the ground 2 years from award. We do have kind of a minimum threshold. We want to see standalone projects have a total project cost of at least $75,000. For projects that are smaller than that, that's more appropriate for a small project fund, that re-grant program. We do allow for public, not-for-profit, and private entities to apply and receive funds. But we also want to see, that these entities have capacity to implement this. These projects involve having a state grant. There are reporting, there's requirements. It is still working with government. So we want to make sure the project sponsors can actually implement these projects. Financing is a key piece. So, this is funds the state does like to see matching and leverage. We also like to see that, project sponsors have the ability to fund this project upfront. As I noted, this is a reimbursement program. So project sponsors need to be able to pay for this project while awaiting for reimbursement. Matching and leverage, we do like to see leverage. It does make projects more competitive. We recognize that this is $4.5 million. We do want to see the $4.5 million go as far as we can. So trying to supplement that with other funds is really beneficial to projects. And we do require that private project sponsors contribute a minimum of 25% of the total project cost. So if it's a $100,000 project, the private project sponsor needs to contribute a minimum of $25,000. For public and not-for-profit projects, there is not a state required minimum match, but you all as an LPC could choose to change that. You could also choose to increase the private project match. That's a conversation that we're probably not going to have today because you're going to get a ton of information, but we'll have it in a future meeting. Site control is a really big piece of it. While many times we like to plan for other people's properties, doesn't work so well. So you need to be able to show that you have site control to implement this process or project. So that could be you own the property, that could be you lease the property and you have permission from the building owner, or in some cases, you have a path forward to obtaining site control. So maybe you haven't bought the property yet, but you have an agreement to purchase. So we want to see that you have the ability to implement that project. The state does require decarbonization. in projects over a certain size, so in meeting the state's goals of reducing greenhouse gas emissions, we do want to fund building projects that are going to be more efficient. So this does apply to certain scale of buildings for new construction and substantial renovation, and we can talk more about those details in a future meeting. And again, I want to implement that this is a reimbursement program. In general, these are projects that, these are going to be my keywords, you're going to hear me say a lot, catalytic and transformational. And we really want to see that they create synergies with each other in the downtown and can help build off each other towards this energy of revitalization. So how do we identify and refine projects? So one of the first ways is through the Dobbs Ferry New York Port application. When Dobbs Ferry submitted their application, they identified a couple, several potential projects that are, could be funded or ready to go and help with downtown revitalization. We also have the open call for projects, which is an opportunity for these private, public, and not-for-profit project sponsors to submit their projects for consideration. I will note that all projects, even ones that were included in the application, must submit through the open call for projects. While those projects were submitted in the application, we do essentially have kind of a new playing field in some ways at the start of this process. And then public engagement. A lot of times we hear from the public, oh, we'd really love to see this, we'd love to see this. And so the information can help inform some of the projects going forward. So after these projects are identified, Christy, Lizzie, and I and others will continue to work with these project sponsors to develop them with all of the required information. We'll provide technical support, as Christy alluded to, with helping to refine the project scope, cost estimating, helping them figure out decarbonization if they have to or if they want to. And then ultimately, you all will evaluate these projects on evaluation criteria. It's usually a pretty iterative process. It's not like one meeting and we're done. It's going to be something that we're going to be talking about over the course of several meetings. So the open call for projects, talk about it. It's that chance for people, entities to submit projects for consideration. We have this to ensure that all eligible project sponsors can submit a project proposal. We do have a standardized form that we expect all project sponsors to submit and fill out. And I think we're anticipating having the submission period open for about 2 months this time. So, people will have 2 months to work on getting the initial information for the projects, talk with us, get any other information that they need before having to submit for you all to then review. Again, all project sponsors must complete this form, and we will be available to answer any questions and provide support during that period. So we asked for a lot of information. You can see that long list in the blue box there, existing additions, ownership, preliminary cost estimates. Tell us a little bit more about what's the time frame for implementation, again, getting to that project readiness. And then I'm just going to show you an example of kind of the template of the form. So we have people fill out a budget table. We ask, how did you all come up with these costs? Did you ask your cousin Bob over there, or did you get a professional cost estimate? So we want to know all of that. We want to know the status of other potential funding sources that you're using. And what's the status of those? Are they secured? Is it another grant that you're applying for? Things of that nature. Again, another bunch of questions on project readiness and time frame for implementation. So we ask things like, what's the work that's already been done on this project? Have you started anything, or are we at the very beginning where you just had this great idea? Is there any environmental information that we need to know about? Do you have any permits that you've already received, or you'll need to apply for? Or are there any challenges or issues that you're anticipating with this project? And then we ask for a general time frame of helping to kind of complete some of these major phases that we see. So I don't say this to scare anybody. I don't want to do that, but it is a lot of information. We want to make sure that, you all have all of the information you need to evaluate these projects, and you're spending these funds on projects that will really help advance the goals of the community. So as I said, we're anticipating having this open for about 2 months. We'll be introducing this at the public workshop on June 3rd. And then we'll be officially opening the open call for projects on June 4th. So we'll post it on the website. We'll send out social media, et cetera, that this is officially open, and continue to provide reminders about this. And then it will close July 31st, where those submissions are going to be due to us. Again, we will be having open office hours. We're trying to set up potentially an information session to share all of this and much more with project sponsors, so they know fully what it is that they are applying for and can get all of the information that they need. I will note we will be updating, this kind of open call for project information after you all have established a real vision and goals and these local evaluation criteria. We want to make sure that people are aware of what it is you all want to evaluate and the vision of this community, but we also want to open it up sooner than later to kind of give them time to get all of this information. So it's a little bit of an iterative process on that, and we'll be communicating with project sponsors once we have established that vision and goals and evaluation criteria. So how are these evaluated? This is how the state evaluates them. We look at the alignment with the state and local goals, and we do, is there a strong demonstration of community support? We look at the project readiness. Are they well developed and able to proceed in the near term? Catalytic effect, if they're likely to have a significant positive impact on the downtown and revitalization and potentially attract other investment. The co-benefits, so what are the benefits, not to just the project sponsor, but to the larger community? And then cost effectiveness. So we want to see that these are an effective and efficient use of public funds and resources. So that's the state criteria. You all as an LPC will develop your local evaluation criteria. Usually we see the LPC adopt a number of the state criteria as kind of that first stage, but you all can add to or refine based on your local priorities and interests. One of the areas we see a lot more adaptation is in the co-benefits. So what are the co-benefits that are really important for Dobbs Ferry? The ones I've had listed here are ones that communities have done in the past. So they've looked at like, we really want to make sure that we're looking for projects that attract regional visitors or they increase accessibility and affordability. We've seen others say we want to really make sure that these projects enhance connectivity and cohesion or provide new job and employment opportunities. So those are going to be aspects that you all will discuss at the next meeting. But if there are other things beyond that that you want to add, that is absolutely what you should do. All right, that's my break again. Somebody else.
Yes. Have you seen, I'm talking about the relationship between this program and other grants. And, you know, I've seen the decarbonization in DRI projects. Have you seen any kind of bling that the project that goes through this process has with, for example, NYSERDA or other grant, you know, the Environmental Protection Fund or other grantees? In your experience, I mean, I know there's no necessary connection, but is it?
Yeah, so I mean, in some cases, there are some state grant programs that specifically prioritize projects within a downtown revitalization or New York Forward area. So that is absolutely true. I think one of the other things about this is, you know, this is for the projects that end up being funded and the ones that are not, is it is an estate, you know, it's an estate plan. It's in a plan that was developed by this community, that was approved by the public. So that does have, you know, a little bit, I like to think that it has a little bit of weight. I like to think that it's something that, you know, if they said, this is a project that the community and the LPC has said is important, that means something to other potential grant programs. But I do know that there are definitely grant programs at other state agencies that say, okay, if you're in a DRI area, like that does help give you a little bit of priority.
It's not one of the DCR, for example, criteria when they look at things like tax credits or anything?
Don't believe so.
Yeah, okay.
No.
Question,
Of course.
are there like M or WBE requirements when it comes to spending?
There are. So for awarded projects, generally, it's about 30% of the state funds are the goal is for 30% of the state funds to go to a minority or women-owned business enterprise. Those can shift a little bit depending on the agency that a project is contracted with. But that is generally like the high level rule. Is that correct, Eric, for ESD as well?
Only 30% and also 6% for veterans.
Yep, 6% for service disabled, veteran-owned businesses as well. Thank you.
What is the anticipated number of projects that you anticipate?
It really varies dramatically. I mean, you could see potentially 3 projects, or you could see potentially 8 to 12 projects, like at the end of being funded. I worked on a New York Forward last year where we received 18 submitted projects. And then I want to say 14 of those were ended up in the strategic investment plan. And it really depends on the scale of the project, the type of project. So I don't know that there's a good answer.
But also to that point too, although the grant is for $4.5 million, we look to submit a range of $6 to $8 million worth of projects to the state. Because that gives them their wiggle room in the event being that, we talked about the process already, but. So Susan's gonna talk to it, you'll see from the moment when we submit the projects in December to when the projects are announced, there might be a situation where a project falls out for whatever reason, or maybe their funding changes or something. So then it gives the state a little room to work with those slate of projects that were submitted to them. So that's also something to consider as well.
It's really like, and I don't want to use the word negotiations necessarily, but if someone comes to present a project and says, I could put forth $200,000, can we say, we'll approve it if you're willing to kick in 300, and we'll, this way our part of pool of money can go further, we're going to give you 100.
So I've seen it more, a little softer than that. What I've seen it is just like, we really like your project, but we also have all these great other projects. Can you put in more money?
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. You can 100% as an LPC, we will convey that back to the project sponsor of like, they like your project, but what else can you do more? Yeah.
Are there prevailing wage requirements?
There are prevailing wage requirements for public projects. For private and not-for-profit projects, I think that there are some additional rules, like it has to have a certain amount of state subsidy in it for prevailing wage, and I don't know that off the top of my head.
Did you mention that design costs are not part of the project?
So design costs to implement the project are eligible. So for example, if you want to do a streetscape project, that's one of our more common projects. The design and engineering costs to develop that streetscape project are part of the project. It's like the outside planning studies. If we needed to do, for example, a traffic study to do this, that's something that is not generally eligible.
Okay. Okay, I have one more.
Of course, that's what we're here for.
My question is, who manages the reimbursement paperwork?
So the project sponsor will be expected to submit the required information from each state agency. I will note that there are usually 3 state agencies that project sponsors contract with. Department of State is one of them. We usually contract for the public projects, the public run projects, and some not-for-profit projects. Empire State Development usually contracts with the private and mixed-use projects. And then Homes and Community Renewal often does some of the not-for-profit, they do some of the arts projects. And then they'll do some of the just only housing projects. So, I mean, and that's something that, as we get through this process, I'll bring in Eric if we need to talk to a, project that is likely to go, could potentially go to ESD, make sure they're fully aware of that, or I'll bring in somebody from Homes and Community Renewal. We want to make sure all of our project sponsors have as much information as they can throughout this process. Okay.
And also, I'm sorry, you gotta remind folks that when they are doing projects, if they do get awarded, that oftentimes their fund's gonna be reimbursable.
Right,
So that's one thing you have to let them
they
know.
have to put it all out.
Right,
Right.
so you have to fit the bill, then get reimbursed for it. And some agencies, will kind of work with them and give them payments in advance after they do a certain amount of. But for the most part, it's a reimbursement.
So one other component of this kind of process is what we call our roadmap for continued revitalization. We're still workshopping the name, open to suggestions for this. But this is, we want to include ideas in the final strategic investment plan that maybe are not specifically projects, but these are ideas that, Dobbs Ferry wants to continue to pursue. It can be things that are, in the downtown. It can be things that are maybe like a little bit outside the downtown that will help contribute to downtown revitalization. We want to kind of keep a running list of these ideas because we want to write them down. We want to have them for, the community to continue to use, make sure that they're recorded. And so some of the things that we have seen, is come out of the ideas is trying to find ways to track metrics of downtown revitalization. Is there a way to track patronage or business openings or housing development? Other recommendations we've seen or ideas, talk about implementing a future phase of a New York Forward project. So maybe, it's phase 1 is for New York Forward, but phase 2 is something later. And that just kind of helps keep the idea fresh in the community. or pursuing other projects or investments that could help contribute to downtown revitalization. So we'll be kind of keeping a list of some of these other ideas that come from you all or the public and vetting these with you all to see, is this something that, still is, a priority for downtown revitalization, but may not be for New York Forward specifically. So how does this end? So as Christy said, we're gonna get some number of funding requests. We could get 8 million, we could get 20 million. Who knows? We'll find out. But you all will come to a consensus on that slate of projects, usually in the range of $6 to $8 million. So there's $4.5 million to be awarded for projects. As Christy said, the state wants to see a range of $6 to $8 million for the projects that are being evaluated. We like to see that range because, as she said, sometimes projects end up moving ahead without state funding, even if they're awarded. And so then we have additional projects that you all in the community have said these are important to downtown revitalization that we could potentially fund. So we will be looking for that $6 to $8 million range, but ultimately the state will award $4.5 million worth of projects. And then at the end, as I mentioned, VHB will prepare the strategic investment plan that contains all of that information that we talked about earlier about each of the projects. Submit that to the state for review in about mid-December. And then hopefully you all will continue to use this plan as you continue downtown revitalization efforts beyond New York Forward. So once it gets to the state, it is a multi-agency state review of reviewing the projects that you all recommend to them. We will make funding announcements at that point. And then contracts will be executed between the state agency and the project sponsor, and then project implementation and reporting. I like to make everybody aware of this up front. Award announcements do take a little time from the end of the process. So you all will be ending the process in October. VHB will submitting everything to us and probably ending after final packaging review in early January, and then the state starts its review. It can take several months. I will note that the first round of projects for the last round of New York Forward just started being announced today. So I say estimated spring 2026, remembering spring goes until June 20th. People start to get a little anxious. They're like, what's happening? So it does take a little bit of time for the state to do its due diligence and make sure that it's awarding the projects that most align with the criteria that we've established. So again, Eric said it, I'll say it again, we'll say it every meeting, reimbursement grant. Again, he said some of these can be based on milestones, but generally the completion of a project. This does mean that some projects will need to secure bridge financing to cover costs during project implementation while awaiting reimbursement. And that's something that we'll be talking about project sponsorship. And then, as you mentioned earlier, Selena, all awards are subject to state requirements, which include MWBE goals, competitive procurement for some of the projects, and several others that I won't list at this moment. All right, and then this is the last time for me to answer any questions, and I turn it over to Christy.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Susan. So with that, we're gonna go into talking about Dobbs Ferry New York Forward boundary, as well as a demographic snapshot that I alluded to earlier on. So I'm gonna hand it over to the mayor if you'd like to speak on behalf of why the boundary is what it is today.
Right, so the key to the grant was it has to be revitalization of downtown. So what exactly is the downtown of Dobbs Ferry? And we, discuss what parts of the downtown do we want to cover? And this is the area, you'll see this map for the area that we covered. And I think what you'll notice is that the train station is a key to this. So people will come from New York City or from North, and their first impression when they hit the train station, right now, is beautiful waterfront park. You can't ask for anything better looking than waterfront park. But as we all know, once you get away from the train station and waterfront park, things, I don't want to use the word deteriorate, but things aren't as eye-popping as they should be in that area, right? So we chose, from that area, this area includes High Street Park. For those of you who don't even know that there's a High Street Park, there is a land that we, many years ago, as a board, designated as a park, and we clear cut it, and we would think that's a great way to enter the village from that area is to revitalize that park. And you'll see Also in that map, it includes Memorial Park. So the area that used to have the American Legion building has also deteriorated, so we want to include that area. We have some ideas for that area as well. So we wanted to include that area. And then as you go further, and my northeast, southwest is very bad. So you'll see that little pocket to the right.
Hudson River is one.
Hudson, you're right there, thank you. So you didn't just work. See, that includes the Croton Aqueduct and the Keeper's House. So we included that just to make it available. We don't know what projects may be put forth in there, but we thought that would be good to include that area with the Keeper's House and go further north. Is that right? North? You'll see it goes up along, Cedar Street, Main Street, and to the right there's Cedar Street. So then you'll see all of the Cedar Street, and then to the left, you'll see where the 99 Cedar Street parking lot is in that area as well. So it was somewhat expanded because we also had to take into consideration the Croton Aqueduct and what can be done there. That's not our property, but we wanted to take advantage of some of that greenery. So we expanded it somewhat, and that's why it looks the way it does. But we think it allows for revitalization of the key areas of downtown Dobbs Ferry. It gives an opportunity for stores, new businesses, potentially rehabbing old buildings and old businesses, and giving the village itself an opportunity to rehabilitate our own property, meaning especially parks really, and our parking lot on 99 Cedar Street. So that's how we came up with that boundary.
Correct. So after hearing that, does the LPC feel comfortable with presenting this boundary to the public and the public workshop that we had been talking about in June? Or do we feel as though it needs to be tweaked in any way to either shrink it or enlarge it to accommodate maybe a area?
We have to take that decision now.
Yes.
Okay. So right there, kind of at the corner of Cedar Street and Broadway, that what do you call it? Rochambeau, right there, exactly.
Yes,
That building kind of wraps around.
yes.
I would love to include that.
We talked about that
Oh.
this morning when we were on our tour, and that is going to happen. We
Thank you.
figured it's a small little tweak. Yeah.
You could just
We
move
figured
the little
it's a
hash
small
up to the
tweak.
little river there, the
It's
little stream.
like a little triangle piece right there.
Perfect.
Yeah, we are going to include that.
Great.
Any other thoughts? We're comfortable with it? And we're gonna make that little tweak. We can share it with you before it goes to the public, but we'll make that little tweak. All right, so then hearing
That's our
none,
first decision.
look at that. Well done, LPC. All right. So as we begin to analyze the existing conditions of the downtown, we pulled some relevant demographic information for your consideration. And these key findings were pulled for Census Tract 104, which covers the Near Fork boundary area. However, you can see in the image on the right-hand side of your screen, it's important to note that the Census Tract does also include some areas beyond the boundary. And so this information, just so you keep that in mind. And then this information, these key findings were also found for a 10-year span from 2013 to 2023. And so those key findings were that 7%, there was a 7% increase in the total population in that 10-year span. Whereas then the population in the village of Dobbs Ferry increased by only 4%. So that's interesting to understand. This area is racially diverse. It's a diverse community. 66% white, 5% black, 21% other multiracial, 7% Asian, and 1/4 of the community identifies as Hispanic or Latino. There's an increasing population of children and a slight decrease in senior population. And Donna, I thought that was interesting with what you were saying earlier with seniors, so something to keep in mind. And then the median household income has increased by 70% within the downtown, lower than overall village of Dobbs Ferry, yet higher than Westchester County.
That's incredible.
So interesting facts, and these are some things for you just to consider. And at our second LPC, we plan to dive a little deeper into the findings relative to housing in the downtown, but in the village as a whole.
I'm sorry, what does that attribute to, the 70% increase in?
We had a building that was put in a high-end co-op condo downtown. I think that really led to a lot of increase in the, and a couple of other new apartment, I don't say apartments, but like 2 or 3 story apartment buildings or rentals are also, I think, very high rents.
We do have here, at least with the median income, I pulled some notes to talk to you in case it did come up. In regards to the median household income for the census tract, it's approximately $146,000. And it's lower than that of the village of Dobbs Ferry, which is $168,000, give or take, but then higher of Westchester County, which is around $118,000. All right.
So can I just pause
Yeah.
real quick? Did these facts jive with what you all see on the ground?
I'm surprised about the increasing population of children.
Yeah, I wanna know like what
Yeah.
increase,
Yeah,
like.
I mean, all the research I've done has
5%,
a major
28%?
decrease
Okay.
in schools and public
Yeah.
schools and independent
Okay.
schools and.
We can look into that and bring that information back to the next LPC meeting.
Yeah, it's just so diverse because you go to the food pantry on, you know, Wednesday and hand out food and you see the other side of Dobbs Ferry.
Yeah.
Right.
So then, with that, as we briefly talked about the existing conditions of the downtown, we'd like to now transition our focus to thinking about the future. So, if you can all please take out your electronic devices as we hope you're able to bring, if you didn't, no worries. And if you can go to your agenda, there's a QR code. If you could scan that QR code using your camera. If you open up your camera, you go to the QR code, a little link will pop up, and if you click on that, it's going to bring you to a website. And I just want to note that we're going to be using Mentimeter, which is an online polling and engagement platform, and all your responses are going to be anonymous, so no worries on that. And then for members of the public, this activity is just for the LPC, but you all will have the opportunity to respond to the same type of questions and provide your input on the visions and the goals for this process at the first public workshop. So I'll give you all a second to get in.
Don, are you okay?
I think I got it. That's it, right?
Yeah, you're in. Perfect.
Thank you.
So for this activity, we're going to be creating a word cloud. And so what a word cloud is, we're going to type in one word at a time. And if you do want to submit a phrase for some reason, whatever it might be, like family friendly, for instance, you could do so by putting a hyphen or by putting no space at all. And as you can see, some folks are already getting to it. The question is, what feeling or atmosphere do you want downtown to have for residents and visitors? And you're going to see as responses start to come in, the larger the word, that means multiple of you have submitted that word. And feel free to keep responding and adding more responses. So we have walkable, welcoming, a destination, warm, energetic, diverse, a sense of belonging.
Oh, I see. So you type in there, and it comes up there.
Yes, you type there and then you should click enter or.
I know, like.
Oh,
Mentimeter, okay.
Mentimeter, yeah.
Mentimeter.
All right, so we'll give you a couple of seconds to send in your responses. So destination, welcoming, and walkable, diverse, those are the ones that are really popping up as the core of this, energetic, inviting. So you could see these are really strong concepts, and I think everyone's kind of in alignment because walkable, welcoming, destination, diverse, those are strong words, but they're achievable. And that's what we're going to be talking about through this vision. All right. So with that, we're going to go to the next question, and it's automatically going to switch to it on your phone or your device. And so for this one, bear with me a second. So for this one, it is a long response, short answer response, whatever you want to call it. And the question is, what do you think is missing from downtown that would help create that feeling or atmosphere? So think back to the response you just submitted. So if it was welcoming, what is missing in the downtown from making it welcoming or making it inviting or a destination? And for this, you could submit a phrase or a sentence. And you're gonna see the answers pop up shortly. With parking, signage, gathering spaces. And you should be able to submit more than one. So go for it. Shopping. Benches, so pedestrian furniture along the streets. I'll give you a few more minutes. Green space, small town charm. Interesting streetscape, diverse businesses, shopping waste removal, continuous retail. So these are things to consider, and we're gonna talk about the vision next, so keep these in mind. Diversity in businesses, I'm sorry. Scroll down, there's so many responses. I don't know how to do that without ruining it anymore, so as you can see, we've gotten a lot of responses, which is great. So bear with me one second. Okay, here we are. Okay, here we are. But generally, I think there's a theme. So green spaces, businesses, creating that small town charm. I think that really contributes to streetscaping, pedestrian furniture, making it comfortable for the pedestrian. So this is something to consider. And so with that, we're now going to get to the vision. So if you take a look at the second page in your folder, you should see a copy here of the vision statement that was submitted as part of the village's application. And the first two paragraphs under the vision statement really speaks to the future of the downtown. And that's why we didn't necessarily include it on the slide as you see here. The portion that does speak to the downtown was pulled out and was put on the slide, and it reads as the village seeks to fully realize its potential by redeveloping and improving key properties and open space in the downtown area and the pedestrian corridor linking the Metro North Station to the downtown. The village seeks to energize the downtown by creating a new cultural arts destination to increase tourism, expanding residential development, especially affordable development, increasing access to gathering spaces, recreational opportunities in parks, improving pedestrian connections and experiences, and redeveloping and renovating key properties to provide for additional mixed use, commercial, restaurant, and community uses. The village will expand economic opportunities and create a more sustainable, walkable, and vibrant downtown. With its core of attraction and renowned restaurants, high walkability connections to the region through easy access to regional roadways, public transit systems, and trails, there's no limit to what our downtown can and will become. So it is lengthy, and this is a great starting point. However, we need to tailor it now to be a little ambitious, as it already is, but we want to tailor it a little bit. And we want it to be illustrative of the community's vision for what the future should be. And also it's going to be advanced throughout all the projects that are going to come in through the call for projects. So we're going to take the results from the past two exercises that we just did. We're going to use that to inform a tailored vision. It's not going to change drastically. It's just going to be a paragraph rather than these bullets. And then we're going to share it with the community at the first public workshop. And that's when the community is also going to have the opportunity to weigh in and provide their input on that vision. And then we will, of course, share that all with you at LPC meeting number 2. All right. So we are going to go back into another activity. And so now we want to understand if there's any challenges to revitalizing the downtown today. So if you go back to your phones, the question should hopefully automatically pop up once I click on it. One second. All right, so what challenges or barriers to revitalization might not be obvious to a visitor to Dobbs Ferry? So think about this from either your role in the village or even just being a local resident or visitor, any capacity that you have with the village. And again, this is an opportunity for you to write a phrase, a sentence, one word, whatever it might be, and you can submit as many as you'd like. So topography, sense of community, limited funds from small business owners, cell service, money, landlord reluctance, limited time of small business owners. Landlord neglect. Landlord participation. Okay. We'll give you a couple more minutes. Also, the screen's gonna fill up soon and I don't know how to scroll down, so. So it has to do a lot with the businesses, it seems like, having to do with building owners, landlords. I see something about implementation of layers of technology, I wish. Oh, look at that, implementation of layers of technology, cell phone service. Oh, here we are, forgot that, thanks, Susan. Many residents and building owners are reluctant for change. Landlords living somewhere else, so I think that seems to be an apparent theme. Buying by landlords to fixing up, landlord participation, so you can see some themes that are arising. So this is going to help us as the LPC and the project team understand how can we maybe help with some of these barriers and these changes, these challenges, but also for project sponsors to understand this before, as they're preparing their project applications during the call for projects, they want to be aware of that as well. So this is going to inform all of us in different capacities. All right, so with that, we're now going to transition into the public engagement approach. So you can put your electronic devices down. And so these are some of the outreach strategies that we've previously identified. Posting to the Dobbs Ferry New York Forward website and village Facebook page. I hope that's some of how that's you all figured out about our meeting tonight. We also did utilize the village's weekly newsletter as well as the recreation email blast, which is great. We even listed the LPC members and key stakeholders to promote engagement. And as you see in the blue box on your screen, there are some stakeholder groups that we've previously identified. Are there others that we should be included? We plan to reach out to them to share updates throughout the duration of the process. So looking at this list, and even if you have point of contacts that we should be aware of, that would be great. For these folks, I think we're good with, but are there anyone else, is there anyone else that we should be considering? Yes.
Actually, two of them are right here. Masters and Mercy.
Yeah.
Lots of students live on both campuses and they.
And lots of families.
Yeah, and
Right.
then, especially visiting day, we can use those dollars in our downtown.
Yeah.
Instead of going to state.
Right.
But those kids do walk.
The senior center.
The senior center, okay. And you said there's a senior committee?
There's a senior committee, yeah.
So do we reach out to the committee, do you think, and they can share the work for us?
Look, the head of the programs, yeah.
Okay. Okay.
We should probably do the historical society.
Historical society, yeah, I'm sure.
Okay. Any other group that you can think of or stakeholder?
It's in the press releases. So
We have an affordable housing committee, would that fit in here at all or not?
We could share it with them and they could decide whether or not it's suitable, so we could.
Well, if you're gonna do that, then you have every other, sustainable.
That's true, yeah,
I just
yeah,
think that
that's
there's-
true.
I don't
Just
think
keep it to the, yeah, okay.
Okay.
There are many congregations which have have committees that work on things, so,
Okay, do you have, okay, we'll have to take a look
Yeah,
at, are there prominent congregations that have the larger, congregations that we should be reaching out
a
to?
number of them are located not far from the target area.
Yes,
Yeah, we saw those on,
on our sword, yes, okay, all right, so we can look into them as well. Okay. And you can, keep thinking about those as I continue reading through this list. So then, just from there, we plan to, issue press releases, which you might have seen already. We issued one for this meeting and the beginning of the process. We plan to distribute handouts and flyers. As I mentioned before, our materials are gonna be translated to Spanish. We plan to engage with existing community groups. And then there's gonna be other opportunities for engagement beyond the public workshop, such as we plan to engage with local business owners to understand the business climate. And then we always, we like, of course, being involved in the community and attending local festivals or events as we can. And we hear a lot about Fairy Festa, and it's right at the end of the process, so the timing might be perfect, so I think we might plan to, table there, but still to be determined. And then, as Susan mentioned before, for the open call for projects, we're going to have a presentation, like an informational session, and then office hours as well to make the project team available to any, prospective, project sponsors.
Dobbsbury Library. That's in the Dobbsbury Library.
Yeah, they should be, they're right,
That's in the downtown, yeah.
they're right in the middle of everything.
Okay, so as I just mentioned, we are planning to engage with like the local businesses to get a sense of what is working in the downtown, not only for the general public, but also for businesses. This information in turn would then help you all when reviewing the projects that come in for the call for projects later on. So that's something that we're trying to flesh out, and we'd love any advice from any of you, especially Ed or Nita, you're also on the Chamber of Commerce, right? So if you have any advice or input as to who we should be reaching out to, we would love to hear that. And then additionally, we're hoping to do, as I mentioned before, some engagement of other events in regards to the process. So we are planning to do something earlier on in the process. And so we were wondering, is there any types of events that have been successful that you've seen happen in the village or in the downtown specifically, that maybe we should be considering doing? We want to get as much feedback and input from the public as possible.
You mean put on an event yourself? Like-
Yes, so like we plan to either set up a table in the library, for instance,
Right.
or as I mentioned, later on in the process, maybe we'll go to Fairy Festa, but if there's something that you've seen and been successful here, even if it's a survey or something like that.
Well, you know, on Wednesdays, we have concerts and some at Park,
When do they
Waterfront
start?
Park, and that's a pretty well-attended event, so you can set up a table at that event, and I think you get a lot of people there.
Okay.
We're also, we're doing a Wickers Creek thing, and we're doing
Benicia Fleet.
Benicia Flea, so there are some events that are coming up at Waterfront Park that, you may wanna have a table there, but I would say on those Wednesday nights, we do get a really well-attended group of people.
Okay, and is that generally like mostly like Dobbsbury residents?
No, it's from all over.
It's from all over, okay.
Do you want mostly Dobbsbury? Yeah.
I would say mostly Dobbs go to that, but
Yeah, yeah.
Like.
But heck, Sunday outside a Stop and Shop, set up a table right there. Everybody got there.
That's okay.
We have the Dine Out Dobbsbury event
Yeah.
that we do, we probably set something in July, right?
So I think it's a mix to your question, like, you know, I think like this is, you know, it's a Dobbsbury project, it's a community, so I think like we wanna make sure that we're, you know, really hearing from Dobbsbury residents. We understand that when we go to festivals, we definitely get non-residents, we try to like inform you all of that and try to like ask them like, oh, you live in Dobbsbury or not, so that you all have that, you know, breakdown and information. So I think it depends, I don't think it hurts to get, you know, outside perspectives, but it also, you know, we wanna make sure that we're gathering the perspectives of residents.
Well, getting some outside might not be such a bad idea. What would bring you to Dobbsbury?
Right.
What would you want, why would you want to come to Dobbsbury?
Completely agree. If we're looking to, you know, revitalize our downtown and, you know.
We need more people.
Right, I mean, there are only so many people that live in Dobbsbury, right?
Right.
So, you know, getting the point of view of other people who actually already are coming to say, what would make you come more?
Right, and how do we get them from the waterfronts to our downtown, right? So how, you're at, right, so you're at a concert, you're at a show, a fair, what do we do, have to do to get you to our restaurant on, you know, right? So what would we have to do?
These are good points. And just to further the conversation, some other questions that we have in regards to engagement. How do we encourage broad participation, including among those that may not usually be involved in these processes? We want to make sure we're reaching out to everyone. That's why we are providing the translation materials in Spanish to hopefully get some of that, the Latino and Hispanic population to our events. Are there effective outreach strategies that maybe we've missed from that list prior? And then how can we promote active participation in engagement events overall? And so this is kind of, we look to you all, as you're already here, you've attended the events, you've seen what has worked and what hasn't worked.
I feel like there's a lot that the people on the LBC and anyone that's engaged can do just by doing more personal invites to things. Like I find in everything, other things that I do, that the more personal the invitation is to attend something, the more likely somebody feels like they have a place at it. So the more, warm and welcome invites to the more people, better, rather than like just our newsletter.
Of course, yeah. That's a great point. And to that point too, so for public workshop number 2, which I'll transition to, public workshop number 1, we will be sending the flyer for that public workshop to all of you on Monday, in addition to the village and the Facebook page and everything. And in that email to you all, we will be putting some email language in there so that when you do send it to your organization members, your affiliates, whoever it might be, it's already there and it'll just be easy for you to share it. Or of course, you can always tailor it to make it more like that warm feeling of a message. So do look out for that, and it would be either coming from myself or Lizzie. And I do also want to mention Tommy Boston, great name. He is our deputy project. Yeah, he lives in Connecticut, so it's unfortunate. But he did just have a son named Hudson, so he's bringing it back. So he is our deputy project manager. He unfortunately is not with us tonight, but you will be seeing him at all of our public workshops and engagement activities, and you might be getting emails from him too. So I just want to inform you of him as well as part of our team. Okay, so as we've been talking about, and you've heard it now many times about these public workshops and engagement opportunities, we're planning to host the first public workshop on June 3rd at 6 p.m. at the Embassy Center. We'll be sending around the flyers, as I mentioned, and we're hoping to have that advertised to the extent that we can throughout the course of the next 2 weeks. At that workshop, we plan to talk through what the New York Forward process is and allow for input on the downtown opportunities and challenges, as well as dive deeper into what the call for projects is as well. We then plan to host the second public workshop in the fall, and that date is still to be determined. And that workshop, we plan to provide an update on the planning process at that point, an update on the finalized vision and goals, as well as feedback. We would like to obtain feedback on the list of projects from the community. And we'll also provide an opportunity to talk through like what the next steps are for the process that Susan mentioned before.
So when you talk about a workshop, can you just explain how you envision this workshop to be? Will the public have an interact with that?
Yeah.
How do you envision it?
Is that required of us?
Great questions.
Okay.
So the quicker answer, for the LPC, you are not required to attend the public workshops. However, it is highly encouraged that you do, because the public workshop will begin with a brief presentation provided by VHB, just giving you the overview of the process, the call for projects and all of that. And then that's gonna be like 15-20 minutes. And then the remainder of the 2-hour public workshop is going to be an interactive station walkthrough. You could go and talk to the project team. Susan will be there. And there are gonna be opportunities to interact with boards, provide your feedback. You can learn more about the call for projects. So that's gonna be an interactive component for the public.
So what time is that again?
6 p.m., 6 to 8 p.m. on June 3rd.
I'm sorry, where?
The embassy. And and the plan for that too is that, as I did mention, we're gonna have that brief presentation in the beginning of the meeting. We will wrap it up at the end of that, at the end of that presentation, so that folks then just go throughout the boards and the stations as they please, and then they can leave, so they're not have to be there for the full 2 hours, because it is a long workshop. Okay, so then, in addition to the public workshops, we are looking to host additional public engagement opportunities in the next couple of months, as I mentioned before. We, again, plan to have one in maybe the spring, maybe the summer. We're gonna see how that plays out, and then one in the fall. And then in regards to the call for projects, we do plan on having that informational session to walk through the application step by step, so that project applicants know how to provide a strong application. And then we will be also having virtual office hours via Zoom on June 10th and I'm sorry, July 10th and July 21st. All of this information has been posted and will be posted to the Dobbs Ferry NYF.com. That is the website that has been created for this process, and it will be everything to do with the New York Forward, what it is, what the call for projects is, as well as meeting information. So a meeting summary after this meeting will be posted to the website. So folks that are sitting with us today, you can refer back to, or if people in the public weren't able to join, they could go back and read through the summary.
And so would you repeat that Dobbs Ferry?
Dobbs Ferry and then NYF.com. And you're gonna see that's gonna be plastered everywhere on our flyers, and it's gonna be on our last slide as well. Okay, so at this point, we would like to talk about the LPC meeting schedule. So if you can all take out your calendars, if you have that available. These are tentative dates that have been identified in coordination with the village's calendar. So understanding that things might change later on in the process, we would like to schedule these today to make sure that we have all of your attention and your, well, being everyone is here, we might as well make some decisions tonight. Unless preferred otherwise, all meetings will start from 6 to 8 p.m. So same as tonight, and will be held here in Village Hall. And as you can see here, and as Susan mentioned earlier, we are planning to schedule meeting 6, but again, that is only as necessary. So taking a look through this list, here we are, the first meeting, the second meeting, June 25th. How does that date look for folks? Starting at 6 p.m. Does 6 p.m. work for everyone on the LPC? We can start there.
6:30 would be better.
6:30 to 8:30?
June what date was that again? June 20. Oh, Wednesday, yeah.
We're flexible, just put it out there. You know, my workday ends at 6.
No, there's
That's fine.
So does everybody,
That's okay.
Ed's workday ends at 6, so he'd like it to be 6:30.
6:15?
6:15?
Oh, my God. 6:15 is cool. Yeah, 6:30. 6:30. 6:30 from the audience.
Do I get 7?
Do we want to compromise at 6:15, a 6:15 to 8:15 meeting?
You guys live in Albany. I feel bad, like you have to go home to Albany that night.
It's just,
I'm staying in a hotel, don't worry about it.
Well, in that case, 7 o'clock. Yeah.
Let's do 6:15.
Okay, so
Thank you.
we're gonna push it to 6:15. Just June 25th work for everyone here?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so June 25th will be meeting number 2. At the meeting number 2, we plan to review the feedback from public workshop number 1. We're going to talk through some more of the findings from the downtown profile and assessment. We're gonna talk through the revised vision and then the draft goals. Project match, we're gonna talk about the evaluation criteria, make some decisions on that. And then we're also gonna talk about the open call for projects. Meeting 3, so as you can tell, we skipped July to give you a summer break. And then we plan to meet at the end of August, August 21st. How does that look for everyone? Oh,
Not sure.
okay,
Might be on vacation.
okay. That's okay, and in the event that you can't make one, we can always plan to schedule a call with you separately, and we'll bring you up to speed, so then you're not behind. How's that look for everyone else?
Fine.
Fine.
Okay, all right, so August 21st it is,
Are we sticking with 6:15 or going back to 6?
6:15 moving forward.
All right, okay.
The only one I'm missing on, to be honest, is the June 25th, but carry on, and if I have to do something separate, otherwise I really will try to be there.
Okay, we can also coordinate before then too.
Okay.
Okay, so at meeting number 3, we plan to again talk about those findings from the downtown profile, continue talking about the project evaluation, and then we're gonna introduce to you all the proposed projects at that time, which is exciting. Meeting number 4, September 17th, so we're moving our way to September. Now,
I won't know,
oh, the school,
yeah,
understood, okay,
but I'll make it a priority. Again,
okay, we appreciate
Yeah.
that. And so for this meeting, I believe Susan mentioned this is one of the longer meetings because we will introduce the project sponsors to come and present their projects to you all. Potentially, that's the current plan, to present to you all on behalf of their project, so you're not just hearing it from us, you're hearing it from them, and they'll give you an opportunity to ask questions to them directly. That meeting, from our experience in the past, tends to be closer to 3 hours than 2 hours. It will also depend on the number of projects that we have at that point.
And these are
So-
people that are presenting, so this is when the Shark Tank comes in.
Shark Tank.
That's the-
Without Shark Tank
parts.
It's like a mild Shark Tank. It's a-
The
That is-
17th of September.
Oh, that's a Wednesday, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So you're walking.
And then we'll all go.
Yeah, I'll bring both.
We-
you sharing these slides or no?
Yes, we'll share all these dates with
Okay.
you all, and the
Okay, so I'll
PowerPoint
invite
will
you.
also be put on the website.
Okay.
So we'll share the dates with you all. We want, since we're all together, we want to try to get the dates, but we can only start
Send
that.
calendar invites too, right?
Yes,
Great.
after this meeting, you're gonna get calendar invites for all of them. Okay, so, then at meeting number 5, we're looking at October 15th. 6:15 start.
What time will we start? I'm sorry. On the,
6:15.
6:15.
6:15, yeah.
Except meeting 4, we'll talk about that when we get to there. We might wanna start earlier, or
Yeah.
we'll figure that out when we get there. And at meeting number 5, we plan to review the feedback now from public workshop number 2, and then review the final project list and potentially vote on the final project list then. If we feel as though we might need a meeting number 6, we are looking at October 29th, and then we would vote then. So meeting number 6, again, isn't as needed, but we do want to get that on your schedule just to keep it as a hold. So that is then October 29th.
Is there a better way to put our votes in,
Yes,
you can't be here?
yes, if you can attend, we can give you the ballot and have you fill it out electronically.
Great, thank you.
All right, so we will share this all with you so you have it, and then you also will be getting calendar invites also.
Is it possible for one of the committee members to zoom into the meeting?
Yes, that is also,
That could be.
Yeah.
to give you a little more flexibility, yeah, that there is that opportunity as well.
Right, Laura, also, the Rock who's not here, I sent her a picture of the times and dates, she said.
Oh, perfect, thank you.
She's done, you know.
Thank you. Okay. So, with that, I don't wanna say concludes, because we're not done yet, but, that basically concludes the information that we have for you all. Do you have any questions before we open it to public comment?
I have a question, what's the protocol or the expectations of us if someone approaches us on the, in town and says, I hope you vote for our project, or, I mean, what are the expectations of us to engage in those conversations if someone approaches us? Is that a legit question?
Yeah, I mean, I think like as the code of conduct said, you don't wanna provide any unwarranted privileges or so forth, but I mean, I'm hoping that nobody says I vote people for a project, because the thing is, we also just vote as a slate of projects, we don't vote project by project. But I mean, you can say, thank you, appreciate your input, and move on. And so that would be the general advice that I would give.
Don't be weird.
Don't be weird.
And I will say that there's been several, historically, that there have been a number of LPC members and other committees that are engaged in the business community, that, they may, help a project sponsor answer a question because, they're more familiar with that lingo and so forth. That's totally fine. I would ask that, you just disclose, hey, I had a conversation with this person. You still don't, it's not necessarily a conflict of interest because you don't stand to benefit. But I do think just in the interest of transparency, it's worth, saying, I had a conversation with this project. they asked me about, this specific component and I gave them, my input as a professional business owner, et cetera.
Right, thank you.
All right, any other questions? All right, so with that, we will now open the floor to the public. If you have any questions, feel free to either stay seated or you can stand up and you can address the LPC and ask any questions, or even if you have comments, feel free to do so. Go ahead.
Okay, I understand it's reimbursement, and I think I understood at the completion of the project. But is it also true that 25% will be paid by the project sponsor?
So the 25% is the minimum required match for private projects only. So right now, the public and not-for-profit projects do not have a state required minimum match. And that's of the total project cost. But that is something that the LPC will discuss at the next meeting, and that number could shift. It is generally reimbursement, as Eric said, there may be some certain projects where they can receive a reimbursement based on some milestones. That would be something that would be figured out, during the contracting process with the awarded projects.
Okay, and somebody mentioned bridge loans or help with getting loans for project sponsors. Would that be you, Susan, or some other department?
So that would not be us. So I mean, we can, we've established relationships with like community development financial institutions, and we can refer project sponsors to them. We generally stay out of that, but we can definitely say, here are people who are aware of what the program is, so that we can, provide that, list of like a little bit of technical support, saying, if this is something you need, here's some potential entities that are aware of our program.
One more and I'll shut up. So I understand that you're gonna present, I just understood when you were talking about the question. So what gets recommended to the state is going to be a slate. In other words, it's gonna be a group, and that's gonna be between your 6 and 8 million. And you're gonna say, so you're gonna look at it universally, and whatever your votes are, you're gonna decide these 15 things together work. Okay.
Yeah, you got it.
Is that Matt? Okay.
Rob Lane, 228 Judson Avenue. As I'm sure you know, there's a comprehensive plan. So I would just ask, I'm sure you've already had these discussions, because there's some kind of an alphabet soup of VHB and NDP. It's gonna be very easy for people to get these things mixed up. So I would ask that somehow, and I would ask on a comprehensive plan site as well, for there to be something about this process and how it relates to the comprehensive plan. And I think however you promote or advance this forward should also open with a statement about, we understand that there's a comprehensive plan effort going on. We expect that this is totally complementary. Because, there's a real danger sort of planning fatigue, seeing people asked to come, like many of the questions you just asked, those were asked in a very similar form in the first public meeting we had for the comp plan effort. So I would just ask you to coordinate with Valerie, I'm sure you know, and make sure that those things are, because they are completely complementary, there's no problem. I just think we need to try to be clear with people about the these things are going on.
Understood.
Yeah, I was curious, how many communities have participated in this? Yeah, okay.
So in the Mid-Hudson region, we are in our 3rd round of New York Forward, and we've awarded to 2 communities. So this is Nyack and Dobbs Ferry are awarded for this round, and so that is a total of 6 for New York Forward. Our DRI, complementary DRI program, which is $10 million, usually for larger downtowns. We are in the 8th round of that, but we awarded 2 communities in round 5 because we had a year off for the pandemic. So we have now worked with 9 different communities. And we do this in 10 regions across the state.
I'm sure we all share a lot of the same concerns though,
Mhm.
with respect to communities. Is there a compendium of project information about what they've successfully completed and maybe some of the pitfalls they might have run into while they were doing this? Because it sounds like you really started from scratch. You had something almost based on a past successful project. So just wondering, is there a resource for that?
So I mean, that's one thing that we are probably gonna do at LPC meeting too, is just talk about like, what are the types of projects that we generally see funded, and I think that's a really good point of like, what are some of the pitfalls of those projects that we can, try to address as best as we know them, because we were not the implementers, we were just kind of the managers, at the top level. But yeah, so I mean, we'll definitely talk about what are the types of projects we generally see in New York Forward communities, and what is, you know, it's still relatively early for year four, so I don't wanna say success. Because we're just not there yet, but yeah, that's a really good point we can highlight.
And for the village projects, we have a village planner, and our village planner has extensive experience with other communities that have done. She's been involved with
Okay.
other communities that have gotten this New York Forward grant and has gotten the DRI grant, so she's the one who. Will help guide the village in which way she thinks will be best, most likely to get approved.
Great. So one thing I'll just say up front, and we really work at this, is making sure that projects are planning for contingency. As we all know, costs have drastically increased in unexpected ways. So that's something that we really work with project sponsors, public, private, not-for-profit, to make sure that you're anticipating that, you know, going forward, because, you know, we're even talking about if a project is submitted now, it's even potentially a year before it is awarded, and then you have a contracting process. So that's a big thing that, you know, we really try to make sure that project sponsors are incorporating into their
There's no
projects.
federal funding involved in this.
There's not, this is state funding.
Just state.
And something to note is that on our website, the dobbsburynyf.com website, we do have a link to the state's website where you can see the previous projects that were submitted through the strategic investment plans for other communities in the area. Most recently in this area was Sleepy Hollow, which won the first New York Forward Award. And then we've also worked with the Village of Ossining in the DRI round 5, I believe. So you could take a look at this to see what projects they had put forward for funding, and then also the list of the projects that were awarded.
And I would also encourage you to Google, because I don't know the exact website, sorry, Eric, Mid-Hudson REDC, and you scroll about halfway down the page and they have a list of all of the communities and direct links to all of their strategic investment plans, and lists of the projects as well. So that's a really easy way to find it.
And that is regionalcouncils.anyone.
Thank you.
And Westchester have won, I would say like about 4 times.
Yeah, and
White Plains, New Rochelle.
Peekskill.
Peekskill, Ossining,
Mm-hmm.
and also.
Sleepy Hollow and how that's.
Portchester.
Did you have a question?
Quick question, Christina, did the map include the fence between Rochambeau and the church? It did not include
I
that.
didn't go to the church, I don't think.
Like, we can walk that far, but if you walked the Rochambeau mural that was not in there, you kept going, there's this fence, I don't know whose property that is, but there's a fence that's like in our gateway, it's our gateway, but it's a fence that
Is
has
that fence,
potential.
the fence over the creek?
Yeah, I guess we couldn't do it, it's right around that Roshan Road.
Let me
Someone
pull it up.
Yeah, that's the one where they're gonna expand it.
That's where you put the orange dot.
Right.
Is that, are you talking about like around performance?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like the triangles owned by the village.
yeah, I think so.
So let me get the little laser pointer. Okay, you could tell me where.
You see where,
What tribe?
right over, to the left of that.
In the boundary?
Up-
To the left of where it says Ashford Ave.
Oh, up here?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That, all along that line right there.
So that would include adding like this triangle
Yeah.
into the boundary.
Yeah.
Is the LPC comfortable with doing that? Do they feel like valuable to do that?
It's a little body of water.
Yeah, that's where the Rochambeau.
Everybody thinks that's part of downtown, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Across the street there, you're in downtown.
yeah. Kind of neglected fence there.
Yeah.
Patty, did you say the village owns that?
I think so. It was up in the air about who owned it for a while, and the village, I think, so. Then it got.
Well, we can ask the,
Yeah.
planner to include that in our list
Yeah.
of questions we have about things.
That would be an easy facelift. That fence.
Yes.
Okay, all right, so we're gonna make that change and then we will circulate it to you all prior to the public workshop to make sure you're all comfortable with it before we present it to the village, to the public. All right, any other comments?
Good point, because there's so many people park at Stop and Shop, right across the street there to get to downtown, and the first thing you see is that little triangle.
Yeah.
Good catch, Ruby.
All right, any other comments or questions? Okay, so with that, we're gonna go into the important dates and next steps, just to wrap it up. So in regards to just important dates, we've mentioned this already, June 3rd is our first public workshop. In spring, we hope, spring or summer, we hope to have our additional public engagement event in the village. June 4th is when the open call for projects will open. And then June 25th, as we all decided on tonight, will be LPC meeting 2, right where we are at 6:15. So we're gonna make that change at 6:15. In regards to next steps, LPC members, we ask that you share the public workshop flyer that we're gonna share with you all on Monday. And in addition to that, we also ask that you review the New York Forward guidebook, as we're going to be pointing to that quite often at our upcoming meetings, especially when we talk about evaluation criteria. So it would be good to just familiarize yourself with that before we get into that meeting. And then for the project team, we're going to prepare for the public workshop, prepare for our additional and public engagement event. We're going to continuously be updating the Dobbs Ferry website as well, website, but then also the vision. We're gonna be updating that based off of the input from you all as well as the public. We're going to continue our research and start drafting the downtown profile and assessment. And then we're gonna open the call for projects. And with that, we thank you all for coming. We really appreciate POA's time, the LPC's time. We do ask, just one gentle reminder, please sign in if you haven't done so already for the sign-in sheet over there. LPC members, if you haven't done so, please do so. And your code of conducts, please hand in to Susan before you leave. And other than that, thank you so much. We really appreciate your time.
Great. Excited.